So welcome to WTF Stories and Advice. Lots of crazy stories and some probably terrible advice. But anyways.
You're looking ravishing today, Caroline.
Oh, I thank you, Daryl. So I'm Caroline Cranshaw, and today we have, once again, the wonderful, amazing Daryl Gove.
Hi, guys.
And we're going to tell you some stories, and we've got an interesting listener's letter. So that's going to be fun. I've been dying to say it to Daryl, but not until the podcast starts.
I'm intrigued. I've got no idea what it's going to be about.
Well, just hold on to your, hold on to what? What do you hang on to? Hold on to your pants.
Underwear.
Your titties, whatever, because it's going to be a doozy. Okay. All right. You ready?
I think so. I mean, I've had a few drinks now. On you go.
It's not that terrible. But it's funny. Okay, here we go. Not going to tell you the subject line because that kind of gives it away. Oh my God, I have no idea what to do. My dad walked in on me masturbating. He didn't see very much, but I had no pants on. All I had on was a tank top and socks. The worst part is that I was masturbating with a cucumber from the kitchen and I had my legs spread all the way apart. I was looking down at the cucumber and I didn't even hear him open the door. All of a sudden I heard him yell. Well, they say their name, so I'm not going to say that. And it scared the crap out of me. He's like, that's not what we use cucumbers for. And I was so embarrassed that my face was burning red. I apologized and I took the cucumber out of my hand and started to hand it to him. And he's like, I don't want it. It's yours now. I was so nervous I couldn't even think straight. Then he started lecturing me about how it's insanity to masturbate with vegetables and telling me a cucumber is way too big for a person my age. And it's going to make my ass loose. The whole time I was just standing there with no pants on, covering up my privates with one hand and holding the cucumber with the other. And I'm looking at the cucumber out of the corner of my eye and it's all white and sticky from being in my ass. And I'm trying to cover it up, but I can't because I only have one free hand and my dad keeps looking at it and I can tell he can see the goo all over it and I'm totally humiliated. I feel as though I'm going to pass out. And then after 5 minutes of talking to me, he says, okay, you can buy your own vegetables from now on with your pocket money. And I said, okay, Dad. I was so jittered after he left, I had to finish masturbating just to calm down. I still had the cucumber, so I used it real quick, like lightning fast, and I watched the door the whole time. I was too embarrassed to leave it in my room, so after that, I just shoved the cucumber under my mattress. I used it a few more times in the next couple of days, but then it was starting to stink up my room, so I threw it out the window, and it landed on my patio, and I just left it there, and my dad found it. Now, now he knows I've been using it again, and he also thinks I'm gay. Please help. What do I do?
Right. Okay.
That's a very sincere question.
So, I mean, is a guy, right? Is he gay?
Well, he said my dad thinks I'm gay, but he didn't say that he is gay or is questioning.
I mean, I see two problems there.
Yeah.
You know, like, do what you want with what you want. It's your body.
Yeah.
But a third or fourth time, that shit's going to be rotten. And that can't be good. And then the dad coming in and having a conversation for 5 minutes. You know, not an, oops, shut the door, let's talk about this later. But That's a whole American Pie style. I've caught you shagging a pie. And I'm just going to stand here and make you feel awkward and humiliate you for a long time. So is the concern here that what the dad thinks, that they're gay?
Well, I think he's concerned that the dad thinks he's gay, which I'm thinking maybe he isn't, because otherwise he would say, well, now my dad knows I'm gay, right? You know,
right.
He's saying he thinks I'm gay. Obviously, doing things with your ass doesn't make you gay. It's just another part of the body that can bring you sexual pleasure. So there's nothing wrong with that. Maybe your parents won't let you have a lock on the door. So yeah, maybe don't throw the cucumber after you've been using it a while out your window where your dad can find it. That might be a tip.
Yeah, I mean, it reminds me of a story, actually.
Does it? What's the story?
No,
a personal one, Daryl?
Yeah. No, but all it was is as my granddad used to give me breakfast every morning and before school, but I was never hungry. So I'd secretly throw it out the window and collect it on my way to do my paper round.
Yeah.
And then one day he found it and realized that I'd been throwing my breakfast out the window instead of eating it. I just didn't want to let him down and not appreciate the food, the Weetabix.
Yeah.
But no, this is quite different because this is a sex toy that's been discarded out the window.
Yes.
And knowing that his dad knows what it was used for and what a state it must have been in, squished by a mattress 5 days. 30
a few times. I hope you washed it in between. That's something you need to be careful of, is washing your sex toys. A lot of people don't do this, and it's how you can get quite bad infections.
Well, the fact that there was white shit coming out, perhaps there is already some infection or something there. So I'm thinking maybe, going buy yourself a dildo if that's what you want to do, or at least fresh veg every day, which all good nutritionists will tell you to have. The look on Caroline's face there was great. So how old is he? Do we know this?
No, we don't know.
Because there was a comment of at your age.
At your age. And also you have to use your pocket money.
Your pocket money.
Which I think, yeah, that's not an American term, though, is it? No, I don't think, well, I'm trying to think. I don't think we said pocket money. So it's interesting. I wonder if they're a New Zealander. Not that we're trying to find out who you are or anything like that. Yeah, I would just, you could approach it with your dad and just say, I'm really sorry you caught me doing that, and I promise not to steal the cucumber again, or...
Yeah, I think for me, if the dad did sit and speak, even though he was embarrassed, then his dad's obviously liberal enough. Because I think someone that was completely freaked out by that situation would have screamed, left, shouted, wouldn't have had a conversation saying, look, hey, that's too big and you're too young.
The carrot.
And then said, look, if you want to do that stuff, you're going to buy it yourself. So this is all the conversation of somebody who's saying have some personal responsibility.
Yeah, that's true.
And so I think speak to your dad.
Yeah.
I think that if you are gay, which from experience, teenagers will, even if they are gay, won't write that way. They use everything they can to cover up. So if you are gay, then have that conversation with your dad. And if you can't have it with him, find someone to have it with. Yeah. There's lots of helplines that you can call. I'm not so sure if you're in the States what there is, but if you Google youth helpline or rainbow youth helpline, gay helpline, you'll find something. As far as if you're not gay, then again, it still doesn't matter.
No.
If you think you're gay and you're not, then it's not a bad thing because being gay is sweet as. And when you bring your first girlfriend home, then he's going to figure it out. So yeah, he might even be happy, to be fair, if you start getting pleasure from humans. So, but again, depending on your age.
Yes. So I think the thing is don't be embarrassed. I would put my life savings on the fact that your dad has probably done some very embarrassing things himself. That's everyone does. You just don't tend to tell your children about the horrible things you do. Except when my children listen to this podcast. And yeah, but I think he'll be more understanding than you would think. He's not going to go around telling people. Let's hope not. Yeah, you wouldn't have that dinner conversation with grandma.
No.
But you're human, hun. So just forgive yourself and see if you can have a chat with your dad and move on. But yeah, I wouldn't keep using the same cucumber over and over because that, yeah, again, a bit of infection.
Never more than once. Never more than once.
And if you need a lubricant, coconut oil is a very good one. Very natural.
Right.
People may not necessarily know that's what you're using it for, but just don't use it on silicone toys or with condoms because oil can break down latex. So,
good advice.
My tip of the day.
Would you like a story?
Yes. Tell me a story.
Well, I thought I'd lighten the mood by telling a story about being friends with a murderer.
Oh, that totally lightens the mood, Daryl. Great.
I'll tell it in a funny voice and maybe that'll lighten it. It was a couple of weeks ago we talked about harming animals when we talked about don't fuck with cats.
Yes.
And it reminded me of something that happened when I was a kid. So I grew up in this tiny little village in Scotland, the one with the asylum. I've mentioned that before.
Yes.
And no, my friend was not from the asylum. He moved to the village maybe when I was about 5 or 6, maybe a bit older. and moved a few doors down from where I live. And we were never great friends. You know, we're kind of more like neighbours that we'd hang out if there was like a group of guys were playing a game or running riot and doing fun things. And I remember one time going to his house, and he was maybe about 10 years old, and he put on the most freaky horror films.
Yeah.
And I was just like, this is wrong. I remember I wasn't allowed to watch horror films when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Maybe that's why I love them so much now.
I hate them, and I was allowed to.
See, there we go.
Yeah.
I remember one particular one we watched was Troll, which is, do you remember that?
That's fucking terrible. Yep.
Yeah, really bad.
I can't even really remember because I just covered my eyes the whole time. Yep.
Pre-CGI, but and his mum was the loveliest woman you ever met. She was so nice. She was such a sweetheart, always really friendly, really loving, really lovely. But this guy was a bit of a bully, and you know, his brother as well, and his dad, who I'd come across from time to time in the village, whenever we spoke, would be like, "Why don't you join the army? Why don't you join the army?" I was like, "No, I'm just not thinking about it.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to go to uni." And he said, "Go to the army. They'll pay for your uni." And was quite forcefully trying to push me into the army, which was, you know,
A little bit weird.
a little bit weird. It's not usual in Scotland. We don't have.
My father always told me to join the army.
Yeah, you probably needed it.
I would have been terrible. I would have gone AWOL and God knows what and then been court-martialed, and it wouldn't have been good. I don't take instruction well.
But isn't that why they send people like to military school and stuff to kind of break them and like, oh, you wouldn't have broken.
I don't break, darling. I don't even bend. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah, well, I got sent to a school for juvenile delinquents. Does that count? And they actually were really smart in how they handled us and just let us do what we wanted and gave us freedom and autonomy. And it fucking worked amazing for me. I totally got my shit together.
See, there we go.
Yeah, instead of like putting on these rules and telling me what to do, which I naturally resist because I have oppositional behavior disorder. Well, I was diagnosed with that as a kid. Yeah. It's like, well, here's the things you need to do. You figure out when you're going to do it and do it on your own timeline. And then I would just do it, and I would do it earlier. Yeah, it's weird.
Awesome.
Anyway, sorry, I'm totally interrupting your story.
No, well, it's... Where are we? We're
So the dad kept trying to get you to join the military.
And I thought it was a bit weird. You know, the family was nice enough. One time, my brother accidentally... Well, I don't know if it was an accident. He threw a piece of wood over the hedge. We couldn't see if anybody was on the other side.
Yeah.
And this guy was on the other side. It hit him in the head and split his head open.
Oh, shit.
And of course, my brother was mortified. He didn't mean to hurt anybody.
So
and
this was the kid that he hit?
This was the kid that he hit. And, you know, we went round to his house to apologise. And his mum was so lovely. And just, we thought, you know, this is nice family. Mm-hmm. So fast forward maybe 10 years.
Yeah.
And we had these little pet guinea pigs. Mm-hmm. And because my brother had asthma, we weren't allowed to keep furry animals in the house. So we had this really big, like full-size shed for the two little guinea pigs to run around in with like all the hay. And they were so cute. And one day I was in the shed and like something was kind of like wrong. And they'd been shot with a pellet gun. I think you call it a BB gun in the States.
Yeah.
And one of them was shot in the eye and lost its eye, and the other one in the ear. And it was so sad. Like these cute little things, and they were just shaking and shaking and shaking. And I mean, it must have been terrible. Now on the grapevine, we never knew for sure, but on the grapevine, it was this guy that had been watching the freaky films.
Who got hit in the head by...
Hit in the head.
by your brother.
This could all be my brother's fault.
It sounds like it, yeah.
But when we... you know, his behavior was always erratic. He was always quite mean. He was known as a bit of a gang leader, like leading the other guys into trouble and stuff. And so I remember my mum at the time telling me, you know, be careful of kids that hurt animals.
Yes.
Because they're going to turn into murderers.
Exactly.
So, you know, I left the village when I was 18, then moved to New Zealand, and time passed, didn't think anything of it. And then one day I'm speaking to somebody from home and like, have you heard about that guy that lived in your street? I'm like, no, what happened? So apparently they'd left the village.
Yeah.
And I think his mum and dad had split up. And his dad was dating this woman in England. And he only dated her for about 2 weeks, and then she called it off. Mm-hmm. And they decided to remain friends. Now, she was a bit of an alcoholic, and she didn't form good relationships with anybody, according to my source. And she had this other guy around that she was dating, and then at the same time allowed my friend's dad to come around, and he would just get really jealous. He was meant to just be a friend, and he one time went and he just attacked this guy on the sofa, just started attacking him.
So the dad, this is the father.
The father started attacking the girl's new boyfriend on the sofa. He was really jealous, and he just flew into a rage. And so obviously he was kicked out, police were called, but nothing happened.
Well, this is Scotland, where they have the highest rate of assault in the world.
Well, this was in England by this time.
Oh, sorry.
And they were definitely English also. But does Scotland have the highest rate of assault in the world?
Highest rate of assault of I'll have to look it up. There's this website you can go to where it shows you all the different countries and the rates of murder. And New Zealand, highest in rape.
Wow.
Yeah, which I found really interesting. And they say that doesn't mean necessarily the most women are raped in New Zealand, but what it's showing is they have the most reported rapes per capita.
Right. So it could be that we're a society that encourages people to report it, and so something can be done. But then also, Scotland's like New Zealand. It's a very small population. We have 5 million.
Yeah.
So statistics can be skewed. At the same time, when I'm home in Scotland, I tend to be careful walking the streets at night in the big cities. And in my hometown, I remember one night, 3 fights where the people were thrown out of one nightclub in my tiny little town, all between 2 women. So that's excluding the fights between men. So people were feisty.
Oh, yeah. They can be very feisty. I know. My father's family is Scottish and or has Scottish heritage, and they are fiery as fuck, basically. You don't mess with... I've told some stories about my father. He's calmed down now, but you don't mess with him. My grandmother, holy shit, she's beaten the shit out of quite a few people, actually. Hospitalized, I'm not kidding you.
Oh, wow.
Hospitalized people. But this is also a woman who was one of the first, to go to this certain university, went and worked for DuPont, and invented an explosive that they used all through World War II of dropping bombs.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So highly, highly intelligent woman, but you don't mess with her. She could literally stop you in your tracks with a look. She'd just look at you and you'd go, ugh. You'd freeze and then be like, is it okay to walk again? I don't know. What's going to happen? Anyways. Miss you, Granny.
Well, I wonder, are Scottish people aggressive, or is it just the alcohol? And I'm leaning towards Scottish people drink a fuck ton. And so did the English as well.
She did, yep.
And so that's going to make people aggressive if they have too much. I was learning about, in that book I talked about the other week, Why We Sleep, alcohol stops the REM sleep.
Yeah.
The dream sleep. And that is the sleep that allows you to be emotionally capable the next day. Oh. People that lose out on that sleep, they can't tell a threat from friendly.
Interesting.
And they've done studies where they've had people look at photographs and rate them, all these different expressions, and people lose the ability to tell friend from foe, somebody that's angry or somebody that's friendly, if they lose the REM sleep. And very little alcohol will do that. Just a few shots, just a couple of units, and you lose a lot of your REM sleep for the whole night. So people that are drinking regularly or binge drinking and drinking too much, chronically deprived of that REM sleep, they're going to be aggressive. And that's just one of the mechanisms of how alcohol can make you aggressive. So Scotland, aggressive people. Luckily, I grew up in a place that didn't have a lot of that. Yeah. There wasn't the same drinking culture or the same drinking on the streets that you find in the big cities. But however, this guy, they went back to England. And the guy that was my friend, dumb to do this, but his dad said, look, this guy here, I want you to take care of him.
Really?
Yeah. So he told him basically to murder the boyfriend of this woman that he fancied.
Wow.
So I don't know the method because it wasn't reported. But what I know is he apparently drove all the way to this guy's house from where he lived, which was another city in England, killed the guy, and he had his phone on him the whole time. So the police just tracked the GPS. Where have you been? Yeah. You were there. Why were you there? And it turns out his dad told him to go and kill somebody, so he did. So, talk about doing whatever it takes to get your dad's approval.
God, yeah.
He added me on Facebook not long after that. And
he added you on Facebook after he murdered, but before he went to trial? Or?
Before he went to jail, yeah. And I was like, no, decline that one. So,
no. Wow. Well,
that's my story.
We interrupted that a few times. Sorry.
Probably the interruptions were more entertaining than the actual story. Especially that part where you accidentally said penis.
So have you read any interesting books lately?
Well, I've recently started rereading one of my favorites. And the reason that I'm rereading it is, as always, the author has released the next installment.
Yeah.
So I want to go back and, I could be a little bit embarrassed. It's teen fiction.
Yeah.
But I do actually want to recommend this author to you. Her name is Amanda Hocking.
Yeah.
And she's young. I think she'd be in her 30s now. She's from the United States. And she was apparently the first self-published author to have 1 million sales.
Oh, wow.
So she sold 1 million books without a publisher.
Wow.
And she did that. One of the ways she did that is she gave away the first book in a series free.
Nice.
And then you got addicted and had to find out what happened next. So her self-writing is typical, like, Stephanie Meyer, Twilight-y kind of thing. But her characters have a lot more humor.
Oh, nice.
And she writes a range of teen fiction, all with a supernatural bent.
Nice.
So the first one I read was about zombies, which I just loved, a book called Hollowland.
Yeah.
And then, I was like, what else does she have? One summer, I went away with my family for 9 days to the Coromandel, that beautiful place you talked about last week. And I literally didn't leave the little chalet because I read book after book after book. I couldn't put them down, not to go to the pool, not for anything. They were so addictive.
Nice.
So she's got zombie ones. She's got ones about vampires.
Yeah.
So that's one that I'm currently rereading. And the book is called My Blood Approves. So
My Blood Approves.
My Blood Approves. Shit name, I know. But if you're a fan of Twilight
Yeah.
and you want something in the same vein, but different characters, and in my opinion, better, then I recommend it. I've read her trilogy twice. So it's about trolls. So human-y trolls.
Ooh.
And they're all magic. And it was being optioned maybe to make a series of it when back in the early noughties when they were making like every teen fiction book was being made into movies and series until they realized that actually they're not all that good.
Yeah, exactly.
So if you want something like, for me, when I've read something amazing, and especially if it's a really long series, I find it really hard to get into a different style of writing. I find it really hard to go and start the next big book. So these kind of books are like those, 200-300 pages, easy reading, don't know what to read yet. Okay, jump into that and you're fine.
Oh, cool.
So that's my recommendation for you, Amanda Hocking.
Interesting. I think I'll pass.
But I'm
Just kidding. Well, not really, actually.
But you know what? There's lots of, gay teeny boppers that will love it.
Yeah, exactly. We do have a lot of teenagers that listen. And I do like books like that sometimes. I'll have a look. I'll see which ones are recommended. And I won't dismiss it completely. Because I think I recommended one recently that it turns out it was for teens and it was excellent. Really good.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know that I'd recommend it for you personally, Caroline. Because you're used to very complex plots and stories and you would know what's going to happen straight away.
Yeah.
So this is for people like me that I never like to know what's going to happen. If someone tells me the end, I'm not even going to read it or watch it.
Yeah.
I like to be surprised and just let things kind of come, not try and figure it out. So it's a disappearing, I'm very visual as well, so I get right into that world. And the vampires in this book are very sexy. So, it's
Well, I did like one of my favorite books of all times is, it's not about vampires, never mind. The Witching Hour by Anne Rice. Love that book, but that's about a family of witches. And that it's over 1,000 pages long, and it is one of my favorites of all time.
I'm going to have to read that. I've read a couple of her books, but I haven't read
I have
that.
it. I can lend it to you.
Oh, nice.
It's very good. So the book I have to recommend is a nonfiction, which is normally what I read, but I have been reading more like fiction lately. But it's called Stories That Stick. And it's by an author called Kendra Hall. And it's how storytelling can captivate customers, influence audiences, and transform your business. But it's all about the art of storytelling and how storytelling, the irony is the name of this podcast is, what the fuck, Stories and Advice. So, because I just love stories, right? And she talks a little bit about the science behind that and how it engages our brain and how we have empathy. But she also gives you a real structure on how to tell a story. Like for me, I've always just naturally known how to tell a story. I'm sure you're the same, right? Have you always just...
I've always enjoyed telling them. Whether the structure is good or not, I'm not so sure. But yeah, I love telling stories.
Yeah, and people like listening to your stories. I know I like listening to your stories.
I mean, I know that I make people listen to my stories. Maybe they enjoy it, maybe not.
But I think for some people, it comes very naturally. And I think it normally comes naturally because their families are good at telling stories. Like my family is very good at telling stories. So I just naturally learned how to do that without ever analyzing it or breaking it down. But what I find is a lot of people aren't good at telling stories. They give too much detail. They bounce all over the place. They start in places where they shouldn't. Yeah. And you just go, fucking get to the point. Or, you know what I mean? Like, I'm terrible. Whereas I'll like interrupt people or, too much detail. Hurry up, and because it just, if you give me too much detail, I'm visualizing all of that. And it causes problems for me. So it's like the gist, the big picture,
Yeah.
But yeah, and it's really, but she gives you this like structure and framework about how to tell a story effectively and how to do it just for any type of marketing, and how if you attach a story to any product, people are something like 67% more likely to buy it.
Well, that makes sense. I remember, going back to my days in sales, is I would always tell stories. And again, this wasn't through any kind of training. I ignored all the training I ever got about sales. Yeah. I always thought, this training is shit. For me, it was be myself.
Yeah.
And I was always top with my sales. And I told stories. If I was selling insurance, like it would be, okay, so this is what happened to someone and they did this, like a true story. A guy took out insurance to cover his loan, decided that he couldn't afford it, stopped the insurance, broke his leg, was off work. It was like, any chance you didn't process the paperwork? Yeah. Like he needed it. People think they're not going to need insurance, but then when shit happens, it happens. The 1 week that I was uninsured because I was switching insurance companies for 1 week of my life is the only time my house has ever been robbed.
Yeah.
So stories help illustrate your point. They make it strong. And it's something I've always naturally done, probably because Mum was a good storyteller.
Yeah. Yeah. Your mother is a good storyteller. So it's really interesting. So if you don't feel like you are a good storyteller, or people's eyes glaze over if they start interrupting you or trying to hurry you along, then check out this book because it really does help you. And I think also if you've got a business or you're trying to market yourself in some way, you need to have stories. And I think us as therapists, I'm always telling people stories.
Constantly.
All the time. And that's how like Milton Erickson, who we've talked about before, was one of the great hypnotherapists of all time. He brought medical hypnotherapy mainstream, but he wouldn't even hypnotize people. He would just tell them stories. Story
after story, and get results. Stories hypnotize people.
They do.
Which makes you open to suggestion in a certain way. So if it's going to help you get your point across.
And it helps them get people to see a point without feeling like you're pushing. I do have a tendency to tell people what to do. It's one of my problems. I'm working on it. But I think if you can tell a person a story, like I had this woman the other day telling me how she's trying to get her grandchildren to report someone that's molested them, and the children do not want to tell. And she's like, I'm talking to them. I'm keep telling them, it's important to tell the truth. And I said, well, a better way to approach this would be to tell a story, not to them, but when they're in earshot. Talk to someone else and tell a story about how they knew, someone who was molested and they didn't report it. And that person went on to molest all these other children, and the children are all traumatized. And if those kids had just reported this, then maybe those other kids wouldn't have been molested. But make sure, tell a story like that, but don't tell it to them, but make sure that they can possibly hear it. And so then they kind of, it plants a seed, and you can kind of think about things in a different way rather than someone saying, you need to do this. If you don't, blah, 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 blah. It doesn't have the same impact.
Yeah, like stories give permission, don't they, to think about things abstractly. Yeah. And, if you tell someone what to do and it goes against their desire, the brain's actually wired to kind of block that, to keep on to your beliefs, because your beliefs keep you safe. It worked for your parents, and you probably inherited a lot of them from your parents. Mm-hmm. and they keep you safe. So a story kind of opens up to new ways of thinking. So,
and it engages the limbic brain, and that's the more emotional center of the brain. And people like try to approach things from a logical point of view, and logic doesn't make us act. Logic doesn't like create us to have empathy or to, it's totally different ballgame. So if you want to influence someone, tell them a story about someone else who had something without kind of approaching their issue. And trust me, it'll work a lot better.
do you know what, Caroline? That reminds me of a story.
Yeah.
There was this girl, and she was doing this podcast. And every time she went to record the podcast, the guy that she was working with would give her lots of free stuff. Just like shower with gifts and free food and chocolate and all sorts.
Really?
And it made the podcast so hilarious because they got all hyped up on sugar and free things to make people feel good. Just saying.
Okay. Oh. I'm like, but you don't give me free stuff, Daryl. And now I see that you're trying to influence me to give you free shit. I get it. Well, that's not going to work on me, buddy.
Did it work?
Oh, fuck. I just gave Daryl a computer right before. You prick. Have you told me that story before? I don't know. No. Fuck. Why'd you do that? Better than I gave you credit for, Daryl. Fucking hell.
I've read the book.
So, a thing that was in the news recently, I guess this happened yesterday in Australia, was this poor woman. Her name was Hannah Clark. She was 31. And she was married to this uber controlling man. His name was Rowan Baxter.
Yeah.
And he was actually a professional rugby player over here for a short period of time.
Was he a Kiwi?
He's a Kiwi, and he was a rugby player. God, what was the name of the team? I know nothing about league. He played rugby league. So anyways, but he was uber controlling with his wife. They had 3 children, 6, 4, and 3 years old. And she had a protection order against him. And they were going through this kind of nasty custody battle. And yesterday, this piece of shit decided to pour petrol all over her and her 3 children in their car and light it on fire. And then people are running and trying to help them. And he's like pushing people away. And then he stabbed himself to death. And the poor mother actually survived, this woman, Hannah. But unfortunately died from her injuries, which, I mean, it's just horrific, right? Like, awful, awful thing. The guy's a fucking monster. And anyways, then in the news, there's this comment that a police officer made about this, about the investigation. They do like what do you call it? A news. What the fuck do you call it when they...
When all the press come into the room and they'd make it like a statement.
Yeah, like a press. Yeah. When they have so this cop at the press conference makes this comment, they're updating, so here's his comment. Our job as investigators is to keep a completely open mind. We need to look at every piece of information. To put it bluntly, there are probably people out there in the community which are deciding which side, so to speak, to take in this investigation. Is it an issue of a woman suffering significant domestic violence and her children perishing at the hands of her husband? Or is it an instance of a husband being driven too far by issues that he suffered by certain circumstances into committing acts of this form?
What the fuck?
Exactly.
He's the victim?
We need to keep an open mind and look at both sides. It doesn't matter what the fuck she did to him. I don't care what the hell she supposedly could have possibly done. There is no excuse for what he did.
That's extreme for him to say that. Is he still got his job?
Well, he's been taken off the investigation. There's been this huge outcry about it, of course. But what a fucking, basically victim blaming.
Yeah.
Using that there's a possibility that the victim is somehow at fault.
I mean, I've heard this in small circumstances here and there. But when we're going to take violence to the extreme that I'm going to burn you and your children alive to death, that's really, there's only absolute heartbreak for that victim and all of them. And there's no way in hell that wasn't premeditated. Like, you don't just accidentally like pick up some petrol, go find your wife who's got a protection order, pour it on them. That's premeditated murder. That's awful.
Yeah. So he should be, I mean, I don't want to say he should be fired. Who the hell no? I mean, he was obviously trying to be objective, and I'm sure all of the perpetrator, all his friends and family are probably going, oh, he wasn't like that, and blah, so maybe he's trying to look pure that he's got an open mind, but my God.
Well, and because I wasn't physically there, maybe again he's trying to say like guilty till proven, innocent till proven guilty.
Well, no, he's fucking guilty. There was lots of witnesses, lots of people trying to come to their aid, and that piece of shit was stopping them. I feel horrific for the poor people that were at the scene trying to help that woman and her children. Like, can you imagine? And this guy's like trying to stop you.
Wow.
Anyways. Now that's a real bummer. And on other crime news, Grace Mullane's killer has been sentenced today.
17 years.
Well, yeah. Well, that is the most in New Zealand that you can get for murder is 17 years, or like they call it life in prison, which is a minimum of 17 years in jail. But most people get out before then.
Now, this particular case, I don't know if that 17 years is appropriate, whether indeed, I haven't followed it close enough, if it was a consensual sexual strangling or no.
No, it's completely and utterly appropriate. What's appropriate is for that psychopath to rot in fucking prison for the rest of his life. They still have name suppression on him. So this is a case, if you don't know it, this beautiful 21-year-old girl is traveling the world. She's from the UK. She comes to New Zealand, and what do you do when you're a 21-year-old on your own? You check out Tinder.
Go and get a pumpkin.
And you go have fun and you live your life. And so this is exactly what this girl did. And unfortunately, she got matched up with the wrong guy, and he strangled her to death, which his defense was that it was an accident, that she wanted rough sex. And, right? This guy, he's just the textbook psychopath. He honestly is. He lies about everything. Like, everyone who knew him came forward and says that he would lie about everything, that he made stuff up all the time, that he was, he just is, psychopaths have no empathy, and they are they'll just lie all the time. I know I'm just repeating myself. Liars they are. They're liars. Yeah, what's interesting with this case, so he strangled her supposedly by accident, and then he looked up, are there flesh-eating birds in New Zealand?
Oh.
Googled that. Yeah. Have you not followed this case? I want to do a podcast on this case, but I'm waiting for the name suppression to be lifted from him so I can talk about it properly.
Right.
I know who he is because I can't help myself, and I have to figure that stuff out. If you Google it outside of New Zealand, you can find out who he is very quickly. But in New Zealand, there is suppression because there are other, this is what I believe, I don't know this for sure, there are other pending cases against him. So they don't want that to be tainted with
Wouldn't be surprised.
No. Yeah. So he Googles, are there flesh-eating birds in New Zealand? Where are the Waitakere Ranges, which is where her body was found? And then he watched some very extreme pornography, which it hasn't been released to the public what it was. I've heard a few rumors, and apparently involved necrophilia. Now, don't quote me on this. I don't know if this is true. And then took, I think, 7 or 8 photos of her dead body.
Wow.
Yeah. Did you not know that? No.
No. Well, the thing is, Caroline, is I don't read a lot of crime. And actually, you're opening my mind to the stuff that goes on in this world, because, that
terrifying.
Sounds pretty extreme. And if it's true, then it points to...
that it wasn't just, like accidentally strangling someone. I'm sorry. It takes like 7 to 9 minutes of applied pressure to strangle someone. Like, you watch it on TV and it looks like it's a couple of minutes. Oh no, it takes way longer than that to strangle someone to death.
That's good to know, because throughout this whole case, because I did read what the defense was,
Yeah.
I don't know, a year ago.
Sexual misadventure.
And I read what, the accusation was, but then I didn't follow it. And I have a girlfriend who likes to be strangled during sex.
Yeah.
Obviously not with me, being gay. And I worry about her.
Yeah.
But knowing that 6 to 7 minutes, then she's probably going to be fine and I can relax a bit.
Yeah, it is.
I was thinking she could have been the Grace Millane if that was indeed what happened. But okay, no, she didn't date a psycho. So phew.
Yeah, it's so that goes to show, how a lot of people are into autoerotic asphyxiation, but you don't see all these people. If that was the case, there would be tons of people dying from this, right?
Yeah.
I think there's been several high-profile suicides. I'm not going to say which ones they are, but several very, very high-profile suicides that I believe were actually autoerotic asphyxiation gone wrong.
It would make sense because they're not going to really publish that to the public.
Yeah, they don't want to say, oh, well, he was just wanking and choking himself with a belt on the door. So, But when they find them with their dick in their hand, you know what I mean? It's kind of obvious. But they keep that from the public, which is fair enough.
Yeah. Do you know what they call it in Japan?
What do they call it?
They call it all fan death.
Fan death.
Yeah, like, the fan on the roof that blows the air around.
Oh, okay.
They were killed by fan death. It's not suicide.
Oh.
And it's not autoerotic asphyxiation. It's fan death.
Oh, that's how they cover it up.
Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting. Yeah. Oh, they accidentally looped a belt through the fan and swung around. It's, terrible. But I will be doing a podcast on the whole Grace Millane case because I just find it so fascinating. I have such empathy for this beautiful young girl who had her whole future in front of her, was just out having fun, and then to have her reputation just dragged through the media with their whole defense that it was, sexual misadventure and that he didn't mean to do it at all. But the thing is that when he woke up at 6 a.m., there was they could tell the activity that he had, looking up, the flesh-eating birds and the horrific porn that he watched and taking the photos. Then there was nothing till 6 a.m. And then he searches like extra large suitcases. Where do I buy one? Yeah. So, there's obviously some premeditation. If you accidentally killed someone, wouldn't you just suddenly, you'd be like, holy shit, you'd call 911. You'd be trying to do CPR on them. You would be trying to revive them, not the actions that this man took.
Well, every time that somebody accidentally kills someone in a movie and doesn't call the police, it never goes well.
No, it
doesn't. So if he's watched any movies, he knows, call the police. But that would have been her 22nd birthday, wouldn't it?
It was,
the next day.
The next day. But they think she was dead before her birthday because, literally it was the next day was her birthday. And then, so this guy cleans up the mess. And they could tell by all the testing that there's, blood spatter and blood that had been cleaned up. He put her in a suitcase and he rented a car. He put her in the car and then he went out on another date. And and then was telling the girl on the date about some friend of his that went to jail for manslaughter because he accidentally killed a girl during rough sex. And, his poor friend and how that can just happen to anyone. And he's telling this poor girl who in hindsight must have just shit her pants when she found out who she was, you know what I mean? And then, so after that date, then I guess he waited till that night and then he went and buried her body in this kind of rural, what they call the Waitaki Ranges, which is very, kind of foresty and,
looks like Jurassic Park.
Yeah. Very, very tropical, lots of big ferns and, Anyways, but they recovered her body, luckily, and it was quite scary during the trial, though, because it really did look like he was possibly going to get away with manslaughter or even get off. His lawyers were very good. I know if I murdered someone, I'd be calling that guy.
Yeah.
He was good. And they really dragged her name through the mud. No, not through the mud, but they really exposed her sexual tastes and emails and stuff that I think it's just so unfair.
Yeah, well, do you know what? That makes me feel a little bit queasy because, she's, again, innocent. Yeah. And this is something that I read a headline today about another case where the guy stabbed somebody. I think this was in the UK. He stabbed a pub landlord 17 times or something like that. Yeah. He left, went to his girlfriend's house. The police were there within an hour And he came out going, I killed him. I killed the bastard. And he's on the police body cam. So he's filmed confessing to everything. Before the police even told him what they were accusing him of, he's like, I did it. I stabbed him. I stabbed him to fuck. But because he changed his mind later and decided to plead not guilty, now everyone has to go through this big trial where everything has to be presented. And it's the families that suffer when some guy decides, just for the sake of it, to go, oh no, I'm going to try and get off of this because daddy's got money and I can afford a good lawyer. And that's just bullshit.
It is bullshit. And shouldn't, like, if you admit to it all, like, was he under duress? It's not like he admitted to that after like 10 hours of being interrogated. It's like he came out straight and said it before he was even asked.
He came out in his boxers because all of his clothes, and they were his friend's boxers, because all of his clothes were in the wash getting the blood washed out of them. Aww. Like, he literally came out, I did it.
Did the friend call the police or anything?
Don't know how the police were called. The friend apparently didn't know about it, but I mean, he'd been on crack the night before and he'd started drinking the next morning 8.2% cider.
Yeah.
And so it was that day. So I've been following a drunk guy covered in blood. I mean, the UK has got heaps of CCTV.
Yeah.
So every street corner, they've got the closed circuit television, and I don't believe they're all watched all the time, but it's like if they need to, they can look at it. So they would have been able to track him in any town pretty much. It's a little bit Big Brother-y, but...
Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, they're catching lots of people now.
Yeah, I used to feel safe when I saw the CCTV, but then at the same time, there's that kind of argument that, 30 years ago, being gay was illegal.
Yeah.
And so you could be catching, and if say the law changes to say abortion's illegal, and then you've got people going to the abortion clinic, you're not protected from the government when they can see everything you do.
Yeah.
And law and morality don't always match. But this week also in the UK, they've started a trial, like in China with the facial recognition software. So they had vans up in London and Oxford Circus where not only were they filming everyone, but they were scanning all the faces, apparently only looking for known felons. But again, that's...
Well, I think that wraps up another week, another podcast.
Another what the fuck.
There's a few what the fucks in there. We gotta bring some more what the fucks next time, though.
Yeah, I'd really like you guys to write in with your stories, because
Yes.
I want to get reading some of them on air, because I'm sure between you as a collective, you've got stories way, way, way crazier than I can even imagine. So send them in, please. And if you need advice...
Yes. Well, yeah, hopefully we're giving good advice and we're trying not to laugh. And just know we're not laughing at you, we're laughing with you, because, story shared is a burden shared as well.
And mostly I'm laughing at Caroline, because sometimes you just look at her and you laugh.
Hey, fuck you. I am fucking hilarious, okay? A lot of people think so. Not to mention my hate mail, but anyways, I should read some hate mail that I get. Yeah.
With a funny voice.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I will so put on a voice for these fucking assholes. But anyways, I'm not bitter. Yeah, well, that's us. And please, like Daryl said, write in. We would love to read your stories and advice. We've got lots we need to do as well, but we're getting to that. And if you enjoy this, send it to a friend, share it, help us reach other people and help them get advice as well. Or you can leave us a review so that it helps other people find us too.
5 stars, obviously, please.
Obviously. And if you want to do lower than that, well, go fuck yourself, really, because I don't care. Well, no, that's not very nice, is it? How should I say that better?
If you give us less than 5, then you gotta start looking at your life options, because things aren't going right for you. Yeah, 5.
Well, okay. If you want to give us less, then give us some positive feedback. Give us some ways that we could improve. Because, we've gotten a few, I think 3 or 4 stars where they actually give some feedback that's helpful. I appreciate constructive criticism or advice and tips myself, because then you can improve. So if you want to rate us lower than that, give us some ways that we can make it better so you'll enjoy it more.
I think we've just lost 2 stars talking for too long about how many stars to give us.
I think you're right. Oh, well. Okay, well.
See you next time.
Bye.